For a time, the humans of Serra knew the illusion of peace. Until Emergence Day.
Whatever happened to Gears of War? Hey, what's up guys, my name is Crash, and today we are going to be going over the rise of Gears of War. In this video we will be checking out the first 3 titles and showing what made them stand out back then and even now. Gears of War is a title dating back to the 360. It was more of a technical showcase at the time that became bigger after the massive success of the first title. I personally joined around Gears of War 3 and went back to the previous titles that my dad owned and would play them constantly. Sadly, over the years, I have gotten older. The last Gears of War game I actually truly got into was Judgment, and left the series since then. But as I try to remember what made these games so great, I kind of just can't picture it, so I have to experience it again, and this is what my thoughts were after. The first mission you get to play in the game makes you play as the character named Marcus Phoenix, who has been in prison for the last 4 years, which we'll go over later. You get released by your friend Dom, and after he breaks you out with this robot named Jack, you two head out of the prison to try to escape. Some of the key things that you'll notice through this is that there is a tutorial that you get to play, or you get the running gun. It's really up to you what you want to do. Personally, I'm a badass, at least I think I am, so I kind of just skipped the tutorial and ran into the first couple enemies I had to fight and got my ass whooped. It was fun trying to do it with trial and error, trying to remember how the keybinds and stuff work in this game, and like how cover-based shooters would actually be like. I haven't played a game like this since Brothers in Arms, which was like a year back, so it is kind of refreshing to get into something like this again. As you're making your way through, there's different things that you find out while you're playing, and that's mostly the gunplay, the collectibles, and just the environment overall. We'll go over the environment real quick. The area that you're running through looks beautiful. One thing you'll notice throughout all 3 games is they do have like that gray splosh looking areas that a lot of people aren't really into, but it fits really well with this game just because it kind of gives you like that vibe of what it would be like after so many years of war just hitting this area. Just not only having the E-Day happen so long ago, but the war that was happening before that, it just kind of all fits together and makes this area look perfect for what it's going for, which I really do like. As you explore the prison though, there is some things that you might find, like these cog tags that you find throughout the maps, which are from dead soldiers, part of your army. So as you collect them, the one thing that makes these things actually somewhat interesting is as long as you collect enough of them, it unlocks a comic book that you get to read to learn more lore about the game. I honestly love the way they set this up, having this outside of the game, so like if you go back to the menu, you can just go through these pages and it won't follow the story of Marcus, it will follow the story of different characters, which I really do think is a good idea. And it really gets people into wanting to go and read these comics or books that are on the side, which is a great idea for like marketing as well. And it's just like a cool thing overall to give you more to the worlds that were in the game, to make it a little bit more interesting for people to want to go and collect these tags and learn more about what's going on in the background, which like I said, I really do like. But how is the gameplay? The gameplay overall is pretty fun, and it kind of feels the same throughout the games, but giving different weapons throughout them, and different types of enemies that you'll see throughout. The first couple enemies that you run into are drones, which are the basic enemies. They are also known as grubs, and you'll fight them almost throughout the whole game. It would be kind of surprising if you don't see them in certain segments. Most of the time when you are fighting them, you're going to want to jump to cover, and the cover-based shooting is pretty damn fun. I really do like it, and it's pretty one of the kind. Like, I did compare it to Brothers in Arms, but this game is completely different in a lot of sense, and it just feels like its own thing. As you go through and kill these enemies, the guns feel so good. Mostly the Lancer, I enjoy cutting people in half and just like blowing other troops away with like the Nash or shotgun, and even using the hammer burst. That is sadly the only one that you actually get to use in this game, and never makes like a return in the second and third game because they give you a different variant of it. It's the only 3-rounder that you actually get in this game, and it feels pretty good for long range combat, while the Lancer is more of like close range and to medium range at the beginning. Aside from those, that's all you really get to try out until later on, which is fine for me. It gives you a little taste of what you're going to be seeing later, which I really do like. As you make your way out of the prison though, you guys book it to the helicopter after killing a whole bunch of enemies, and on your way you see this giant thing come out of the ground, which ends up being a corpser, which will play a role way later into the game. After escaping, you and Delta Squad are now joined together, and this is made up of Kim, Dom, and Carmine. Carmine is just kind of like the random character thrown into the group, but he is my personal favorite in each and every game. I love the Carmine brothers. They are just appealing to me for some reason. I think it's just the helmet mostly, just because I always find them kind of cool. The other one is Kim, which ends up being the leader of Delta Squad, so you are going to be following him around and following his orders. And Dom, of course, you already met him at the beginning, is just a very close friend, almost like a brother. When you guys end up getting to the next location and land, you meet up with Colonel Hoffman, who is pissed off to see you because you were supposed to be in prison still, and he doesn't understand why you're not. But he is fine with it happening just because of how bad the war is going for them. So any soldier that they can get is pretty much what they're fine with at this point. So after you guys have a little conversation with them, the only other person that you meet here is Anya, which is Marcus's love interest. You find that out more if you like read the comics and stuff. It doesn't really show too much in this game aside from them looking at each other a little bit. But after a little bit of a conversation with him and getting told to go and find Alpha, you guys are ambushed and one of the soldiers gets killed, and you guys push your way through and go and try to find Alpha. One thing I will say about the environment in this location, like I said at the beginning, is this new city that you get to explore looks awesome. Just seeing like all the destruction that the hammers have done and all the emergence holes that have been made by the drones, everything looks amazing. And it's a perfect way of doing the showing but not telling type of story. And it really does pull you in to want to find out more about how this all happened and where is this story going, which I really do like. At the beginning of this mission, all you are doing pretty much is pushing through a decent amount of enemies, like I said, looking for Alpha earlier. As you make your way through, the combat that you get to do with a couple of the enemies is still entertaining to go through, and it is pretty good pacing for it. Every time that you fight a decent amount of enemies, it gives you a couple seconds to breathe, which I really do like because a lot of games just think action, action, action nonstop is what you need, but sometimes you need to slow it down and just give someone a second to breathe for it. As you push through though, you end up finding part of Alpha and they all end up being dead, so you have to find where the rest of Alpha ended up going so you can find what they are holding, which is the resonator. As you push through, you end up getting ambushed, and this is where it kind of teaches you about flanking tactics, which is pretty much what you want to do throughout all of these games. It's the best way to kill the enemies, it's just outmaneuvering them. As you go through and maneuver around this Troidica that is shooting at you, you end up taking them out and pushing on to the next location where you have to head up these stairs. Once you get to the stairs and head up, you fight another like batch of enemies, and after doing so, you end up getting a cutscene where this happens.
Yeah, but I got a problem. Something's wrong with this thing. It keeps jamming. See?
After watching Carmine get his head blown smooth off, you end up seeing that this is what it's trying to teach you, is to always stay in cover and never let your weapon jam when you are reloading. Because you do get a damage buff if you reload it on a quick time event, like at the top right as you're playing, which is kind of a cool feature that they threw in that they didn't really need, but it just adds a little bit more to the game. The one thing I will say, it is kind of interesting being able to have two different primaries while also having a grenade inside the scroll wheel and a pistol on the bottom, just so you can have like a decent amount of weapons for any type of interaction that you're going to be going through, which I really do like. But after seeing him die, you end up being able to go and grab that Locust Sniper if you're able to find one. And those things hit pretty damn hard if you can get one of them. And like I said, it will pretty much one-shot the enemies when you see them, which I really do like. But once you make your way through a decent amount, you end up finding Cole, which is the next member that is going to be joining your squad after him dying. And Cole is one of my favorite characters in the game. He is more of like a charismatic and more of a morale boost type of character, which I really do like. He ends up getting down by a couple locusts that are attacking him because he's all by himself. But you make your way down to him and save him, and this is where you get a little bit of like an idea of who he is. Aside from like that, he is also a thrashball player, which was a sport before like the Locust came up, and then ended up joining the army afterwards to kind of like motivate people to join the draft and protect what is left of humanity, which is kind of cool. But once he joins your squad, he tells you that Alpha is still alive. They're just in a different location. So you guys make your way to try to find them. But the issue is that there is something like blocking any of like comms going through, which is a cedar. So you have to find your way to one of those. You end up at a door that you can't get through and get attacked by the next type of enemy, which is the wretches, which are like a monkey type of enemy where they can climb on roofs and just like scream stupid loud, which is kind of an interesting like throw-in. They are more of just like a rush you type of enemy, so they do not think, they just bum rush at you immediately. So now you have to deal with not only drones like hiding in cover that are going to be shooting at you, but you also have to watch your back because these dudes can come from anywhere and just attack you from behind or from above or even from the side. So they are pretty much the flanking type of enemy, which I do like for like a mix for it. But after killing a decent amount of those, you end up getting to the next location where you get to try out the next weapon, which is the Hammer of Dawn. This thing is awesome. When you go outside, sometimes depending on, you can use this weapon. It is only like a rare usage type of weapon. They do not let you use it anytime that you want. Even if it is outside, you cannot just use it. You have to wait until there's a satellite above for it to actually be useful. When you use it, it just shoots a beam all the way down and just annihilates any of the locusts that are in your way, which I really do like. It literally just obliterates their bodies, like they blow up into a million pieces. And this is what you use to take out the cedars because they are a little too big for like just normal weapons to do any damage to them. So you use them. And you destroy a decent amount of cedars. And this is also where you get to find out a little bit more about your trial. And Kim makes a comment about it. And Dom says the whole thing was a sham, which ends up leading to you finding out a little bit that it was about your father and how you went to try to protect him so you didn't follow orders, which is interesting for the plot. Another thing that they add throughout the gameplay is the decision making depending on which way you want to push. Like there's two different directions that will be branching off and you got to decide which one you think you will favor to want to play through. Once you decide which one you want to go through, it can change the gameplay dramatically. At least not really that much in this one, but in the later date titles, it really does. Like sometimes it will give you more close range combat while the other one is more long range, or one is covering the other as they try to push through a location, making for like a good mix for whatever type of playstyle that you have, and hopefully you pick like the right decision when you do these. But as you make your way through, you end up destroying the rest of the comm beacons, and then after killing the rest of the cedars, you head up to the roof to defend the Alpha squad that is left, being ran by a dude named Baird. And once you actually cover them by shooting some Troidicas down at the location where they are, you end up saving them and head down to them, leading to you meeting up with the main antagonist of the game, Rom. You guys end up getting ambushed by these guys, and this ends up happening.
They have located another squad. Our strategy remains the same. Cut off the head of the snake, and the body dies.
Not only did we get to watch Rom completely annihilate Kim, this leads into the next location where you box yourself in and have to fight the female version of a locust, which is the Berserker. These things are fucking crazy. Like legit, right off the bat, you watch her completely annihilate two of her own people because they don't really give a shit. They will kill anyone that's in their path. They cannot see, so they kind of just go off of smell and hearing. So this part makes for an interesting, like kind of like cat and mouse type of gameplay where you have to try to make your way outside with them so that you can use the Hammer of Dawn to kill them. But you're also on a time limit, so you have to be quick about it. It makes for like an alright mission. Sadly, this thing is overused a little bit in this game, so it's not as interesting as like a one-time usage, which I was hoping for. After killing it though, you end up being promoted to the leader of Delta Squad, and Baird and Cole end up joining your squad because, of course, the rest of Baird's squad ends up getting killed aside from them when the Berserker ended up finding them and just completely ripped the dude apart. But after they join you, you guys all head out to go to the next objective. Of course, after this part, they end up telling you that you are not able to get a ride, so you have to find a way yourself. So Dom ends up coming up with the idea of heading to this one place that he knows of in town, which is ran by a group of stranded. On your way through, you end up fighting a decent amount of locusts and are introduced to the new enemy called the Boomers, which just say fucking boom every time they shoot a shot, which I really do like. You end up killing them and you can pick up their explosive weapon, and this thing fucking hits. It just blows anything out of the way if you need it, which I really do like. Watch out though, you can end up obliterating yourself if you're close enough with it, which I do like as well. Adding a little challenge to it aside from just you having like a dumb fun type of weapon, it does have like its like weaknesses in the game. After pushing through them though, you end up at the outpost of Stranded. Baird isn't too happy because he's not a huge fan of like the stranded people, which are just members that ended up getting stranded in the city when the Hammer of Dawn hit, which is kind of like a bullshit like hit on them. It's not their fault that they're there. Like they kind of blame them instead of like joining the COG. Why didn't you join us? Like why are you breaking off from it? But to be fair, after seeing the hammer strikes, I wouldn't be all too happy with this group as well if I was just some random civilian in like any location during that. But once you actually head in, you end up finding out some interesting lore about Dom. One thing that he is trying to do is find his wife Maria. She had two kids with him, and both of them are sadly dead. And after that happened, she kind of just left. You never really could find her again. So he is still looking for her. So the reason why he knows these stranded members is because they were going to be giving intel if they ever seen her. But sadly, he had to use his favor to get you a vehicle so that you could drive off to this facility where you guys are going to mine down into the tunnels so that you can place the resonator. So he gives up that chance to get a vehicle from Franklin, which is the leader of this group. And as like a pretty much a insurance policy to make sure that everything goes smoothly, they end up taking Baird and Cole. So you and Dom are the ones that have to head and go get the vehicle. And along the way, you are introduced to the Krill. Once it hits nighttime, the Krill come out, which is like these like bat things, and anytime there isn't light, it completely annihilates any enemy that's in the way. And it makes for pretty fun gameplay where if you are able to take out like lights, or you have to use lights to get to the next location, makes it a lot more challenging and a bit more interesting for like the gameplay. Not only can you get killed by these, the locusts do as well. They are not friendly with anyone. Anyone is a combatant for them. As long as they are in the darkness, they will kill you. So as you make your way through, you will see like pretty big examples of this happening, making for a really fun like little puzzle area for you to go through where you have to use like lights to get around, making for an overall pretty good mission when you are just pushing through this night of the city. Once you hit the gas station where the car is, the dude is an asshole and didn't end up filling up the car, so you have to sit there for a little bit and fill it up. And this is where you're ambushed by a lot more locusts, and after pushing through and killing a decent amount of them, you end up getting a cutscene where the gas station is blown up. So fuck that guy, at least we got some type of revenge against him. But of course he has to sit in the car with you and nag you along the way as you get back to Franklin to pick up Baird and Cole. And you end up finding out they ended up getting attacked by the locusts, so you end up having to push your way to try to help them wipe out the fort so that they can get into the vehicle and you guys can make your way to the facility. The one thing that you get to try out during this before you get to the fort though is the vehicle segment where you get to drive it around, which is pretty damn unfun. I'm going to be real. It wasn't really all too interesting. The one thing that they try to add to mix it up aside from you driving the car, which feels kind of clunky, is that you're able to use the UV lights to take out the krill, but it's just not really that fun. Honestly, I could have went out without it like happening in the game, but it's like an alright little side thing that they throw in to mix up the gameplay a little bit. After defending the base, which is kind of a fun segment, just fighting a huge horde of enemies as you use troikas and other weapons that are around the base, you end up wiping them out and then head on to the facility. Once you get to the facility, this is where it gets a lot more interesting parts of like the plot. You have to make your way in, and it's kind of like a horror vibe, which I really do like. The original game has a lot more of like a horror aspect compared to the other two games, where everything kind of just feels like dire and kind of creepy in a way. These facilities look a lot more like scary, at least in this one. As you make your way into the second and third one, it still has kind of the same vibe, but it's not as like hard-hitting as this one is, at least for me. But you end up having to try to find a way into the facility, and Marcus ends up getting frustrated and sending Baird and Cole different directions to go and find a different way in. They end up in the sewage area of it, so they ended up getting the shit end of it, literally. No pun intended there. But you guys end up heading in a different way and end up running into a location where you can't get in because you need a passcode. And then you end up finding a stranded member that ended up surviving in here. So that's kind of cool. He ends up opening the door for you, and he thinks you guys are going to be escaping. But of course, you guys end up staying. So he ends up calling you guys pigs and shit. And I'm like, okay, this guy's just kind of an asshole. But luckily, he ends up dying like 2 seconds later. But this introduces you to locusts, like the Wretch versions that are glowing, which does play a role later into the other games. But in this game, it's kind of like a hint at what is going to be happening later on. And it's kind of interesting. So these things are just pretty much glowing, and when they die, they explode instead of just like dying normally. So it does some damage, so you want to stay at a decent range from them, or you're probably going to either get hurt or get killed from just the explosion damage by itself. But after you push through the facility and head on to this next location, this leads to like an on-cart shooter area, which is alright. You just sit on like a rail cart and shoot some enemies as you make your way down into the tunnels, which makes for okay gameplay overall. You don't really see much, but you get to see like the area around here, and it all looks really nice, mostly in the remaster. I really do like how they like spiced up like the look of this. After crashing on the carts though, you end up getting onto a lift to go farther down into the mines, and this is where you find where you have to put down the resonator. As you make your way through, you fight some more of the glowing wretches and a decent amount of locusts, leading to you fighting your first ever kind of like boss fight in the game, which ends up being a corpser, which is the thing that you see at the beginning of the game. The way you do this is that you have to shoot at these like weak points, and you don't end up actually killing him. You make him fall backwards into some of the emulsion, which is the fuel of this game. So emulsion is just like what fuels all the industry around the world actually, and is part of like the main plot of Gears of War, actually being the reason why the humans were at war with each other during the Pendulum War, being like a war for this type of gas that is made down here, which is kind of fitting with like real world problems as well. But this is where you end up nearing the end, where you have to drop off the resonator. They introduced two different things around this time, which is the Torque Bow and the Theron Guards. The Theron Guards are just like the elite type of grunts that you'll see throughout the games, and they do pack a huge punch depending on which ones you're fighting. And they also not only do a lot of damage, they also eat a lot of bullets as well, so you have to be ready for like some pretty hard combat with them. But after you end up fighting them and grabbing the torque bows, these things are pretty much just an explosive bow that sticks to any enemy except them. It just bounces off them, which is kind of bullshit. But after defeating them, you end up placing the resonator down, and then it starts scanning the underground to see how vast it is. So you guys end up heading to the top, and this is pretty much where your objective is complete. Or so you thought. Once you hit the top, you end up finding out that the tunnels are way bigger than you expected them to be. Like, way bigger. Like, it wasn't what you were expecting. You were expecting it to be somewhat big, but it just ended up going way out of scale to the point where there was no way of actually controlling this. So the next objective ends up being for you to head back to your father's estate. So you head back there to find more information on how big the tunnels are, because for some reason your dad knows everything about this world. Sadly, Rom was listening over the comms, so he ends up heading to the estate and tries to get ahead of you. So you are flying over there with another squad, and this other squad ends up getting blown out of the sky, so they pretty much got shit on immediately. So the first objective is to go and find the squad and make sure that they're all right. As you make your way to them, you end up finding them being okay, but being robbed by some stranded people, which is kind of insane. Mostly because they're not even dead, they're still alive, and they're just ripping the guns out of their hands. But after you end up saving them, you guys head on to the estate and fight a decent amount of locusts. There isn't much introduced around this time, but it makes for an overall pretty fun mission, giving you a cool environment of more like close corner combat. A lot of the combat you've had so far is more like medium range to long range, so it is good for like the pacing of like adding some type of different variety to it, which I personally like. One thing I don't like though is on your way to this location, you end up fighting another Berserker, where it's the same gimmick where you just have to break some pillars and then fight with the Hammer of Dawn to kill it, making for overall pretty unfun fight, at least in my opinion. I really don't like the Berserkers after the first time you fight them, just because it's always gimmicky. I wish there was an easier way to kill them aside from the Hammer of Dawn, because I think the overusage of this type of weapon makes it a lot more uneventful as a weapon overall, because then it just doesn't feel as special when it gives you it 14 times in a row. It just feels like just another weapon in the game, which it shouldn't. After you break into the estate though, you head into the cellars and you find out that your dad has a whole bunch of intel on the locust, literally mapping out the whole tunnel system that they have, being so big to the point where they can't even download it. They have to use Jack to bring it back to base. That's how insanely big it was. On the way out though, you end up getting attacked by more locusts, so you have to try to get around a huge army. And as you make your way through, this ends up becoming like a timed event, so you have to push as quick as possible. The way I did this is I just bum rushed to the end, and that's probably the best way to do this because there's too many enemies to actually try to fight here. So once you actually get over there, it heads into the next missions, which were added later on in the first remaster, which was in Gears Ultimate, but I guess was part of the PC port at the beginning, but never made it to the console version, which was kind of interesting. While I do like the cutscenes of this location, I honestly cannot stand this like location for like the missions. It's not because it's like bad, it's just a little too long. I feel like it overstays its welcome a little too much for me, where it pushes from like maybe 10 to 20 minutes that it should be to like an hour long, where you're just trying to lower a bridge so that you can get to the train so you can set up where the bombs have to land to blow up the tunnels. So the way you do this is you have to head to this facility, but the issue is not only are you dealing with like the enemies that are in the area, you have to fight a Brumac. The Brumacs are really cool. There's just like these big ass creatures with like cannons on the back with miniguns on their arms. They're pretty tough, and you end up getting to fight them at the end, which is kind of fun. But when you go through this mission, the first thing you have to do is turn on some generators at this facility, which takes you like 10 to 20 minutes, and that's what I mean. It just takes a little too long, while Baird and Cole are just running around this whole time. And then once you get those turned on, you have to head to the next location and take out some cedars so that you can get the comms back up. And after taking out the comms, you end up having to head to another location where you have to defend against the Brumac, and then you have to head to another location where you have to defend against the Brumac again. And then this leads into the actual boss fight against the Brumac, at least, which is kind of fun. The issue I have is, for some reason in this remaster, these AI are so fucking stupid. Dom, for some reason, instead of just like trying to stick with me, would just run right into the fucking Brumac and kill himself. He did this like 2 to 3 times in my playthrough. It was pissing me off. I don't know why he was doing it. Like, it gives you a mission fail anytime he does this. You legit run right under their feet, you stomp on him, and then instead of moving away from him, he just go right under his feet again and get fucking stopped again. I legit was getting so pissed off because of this. And this isn't the first time this has happened. For some reason in this port, it just does not feel right. They do not like to listen. Like when I press regroup, sometimes they just fly under the ground. I don't know why that happens. Sometimes they like to do some poses, which is awesome. This is what I want in my video games in 2026. It makes for really fucking agitating gameplay, which I don't understand how to fix. Like, I don't know why they want to be models. Like, we are fighting a war, buddy. You need to chill out. The only other thing I actually honestly have a gripe with, aside from them not doing that, is that the Troidicas that you end up fighting through this, I know I should have talked about this earlier. The helmet that you're shooting at for these enemies, the hitbox is so fucking off. You shoot them in the head, it misses, no matter what. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if they have like an invincible head or like what the issue is here, but they legit do not die when you shoot them, which is really fucking annoying. But aside from that, this fight was kind of fun. If Dom didn't just keep running under him and keep getting killed by him over and over again, it would have made it a lot better of an experience, at least for me. But after doing this, you end up getting to head to the train and you fight through some enemies. And then, of course, Baird and Cole do not make it to the train, which kind of annoys me. The only thing I don't really like as well about like the characters and stuff is I really do like Cole and I do like Baird, but they are pushed to the sidelines so many times where they are kind of like the support cast that isn't really around. Like sometimes they hit you up on the comms and sometimes they are part of your squad, but when they are actually are part of your group, it makes for 10 times better gameplay. But most of the time, for some reason, they would rather them be separated from you, which I don't really get. So once you guys actually get onto the train, you have to fight your way through a decent amount of hordes, which is kind of fun. It's not all too bad, but you have to like do it quickly. And this is where you get to fight another Berserker. At least this Berserker is a lot more interesting. This one, instead of just being like any other Berserker in the game, you end up having to fight them differently by attracting them to the edge of the train and then disconnecting it, and he flops off and fucking flies away, which is kind of funny. He ends up dying that way. And then after doing that, you head to the front of the train where you get to fight Rom. And holy shit, this dude is annoying if you are not set up for it. So the way you want to do this is instead of like just running in, you have to use explosives. So grab the torque bow before going in and grab the long shot sniper. And this will be a breeze. Just shoot him with the torque bow, shoot him with the sniper. You do that a couple times, he dies. If you don't do it that way, he's going to be pretty damn annoying because he not only has Krill to protect them, those Krill will aggro you, and he also has people that attack you from the side. So you have to take your time with this, or you're probably going to die, which is pretty damn annoying after like the third or fourth time. But he makes for like an okay boss. The main bosses in this game aren't that great. It's usually like the side bosses that have a little bit more charm, which is kind of surprising for me. After killing Rom, like he gets annihilated, you end up setting up the bomb. It falls into the emulsion and blows up and takes out the tunnels. So yay, we win. At least we thought we did. You end up getting to hear the voice that you heard at the beginning, which is the Queen of the Locusts. She doesn't really play much of a role here, but it does introduce her into the plot, so you get kind of like an idea of what the next two games are going to be about, which I really do like. Overall, I do find this campaign really fun. Like I said at the end, some of my gripes started coming in right there, which are the AI sometimes can be really finicky and be kind of annoying. But aside from that, like I think the environments of like the campaign overall are really fun. I do love everything that I got to see. Like even the facility, even though it's a lot more slower pace, I did like looking around and seeing like different parts of the environment and stuff. And like even the mines, even though those sound kind of boring, the emulsion makes everything light up and look kind of beautiful in a way. But the other things like the gameplay, it's really fun, introducing a lot of different enemies that you get to fight. A lot of games do not have that much enemy variety, so this game did pretty well on that. I will say the only game that has topped it, like in the Gears franchise, is definitely the second one, and that's the one we're going to be going into next. But aside from that, the gunplay is pretty fun. Not too many weapons though, which you'll realize as you're playing multiplayer as well, which we'll go into in a couple seconds. Is still okay overall. But aside from that, the gunplay, the gameplay is still fun. all the locations that you actually get to traverse all feel really well formed and fit perfectly for what they're going for like a cover-based shooter. Everything actually looks like it's like natural. It's not like unnatural environments, which is kind of surprising. Most games do not get that right. But after pushing and getting all that done, the only thing that you actually have left to do aside from those is the multiplayer. The multiplayer in this one fucking sucks. Now, it's not because the multiplayer overall is a bad thing, it's just the players are too damn sweaty. I ended up grabbing gameplay from Gears of War 3. This is one I had the most fun with after going back and playing it. And at least in Gears of War 3, I was able to find players that are actually casual, while in like Gears of War Ultimate or Reloaded, they're all sweats. Like they will bounce off the walls nonstop, making for some of the most unfun gameplay, feeling like I'm playing against phase members, which is not fun. But if you can actually find some casual players, the multiplayer is actually pretty entertaining. It is kind of like bare bones though, with just like you only having like the two weapons to choose from, which is the Lancer and the Gnasher, but you can find different weapons as you play through, which makes it a little bit more of like a cool flow. So you want to push towards these like set locations so that you can get different types of weapons, which I really do like. But that's kind of all that you get from this game. So you not only get the comics that you get to read, you get the multiplayer, which is a cool blend as long as you can find casual players, and a pretty good story overall. I honestly really do recommend playing this if you haven't. But into the next one is where it gets even better. But this one is still like eye-catching even today, and is still really entertaining to go through for longtime fans and even people that are new to the franchise. I would highly recommend giving it a shot. I wish those next two would actually get a remaster, but we'll see about that. Well, let's get into Gears of War 2.
It began, as always, with the desire for power. The need to conquer, the hunger to consume. Inevitably, this led to conflict. Humanity fought an endless battle against itself, until it was forced to unite against a power far greater than it had ever known. But even united, humanity left only destruction in its wake. Despite their best efforts at survival, the humans of Sierra continued to march blindly to their imminent doom, unaware that their misguided attempts at retaliation were only leading them ever closer to extinction. They had thought us crippled by their weapons of mass destruction. But to survive is to endure and prosper, and we have most certainly survived.
Gears of War 2 starts up with 6 months later after the bombs going off in the first game, and this leads to what actually happened after all this, and this was pretty much just caused the even bigger problem after the tunnels were exploded. This led to more aggression from the Locusts and even more of a hard push from them, and this leads to you being in the last safe haven of like the human race, which is Jacinto. It's pretty much impossible to actually breach here. For some reason the ground under them is a lot harder than in the other locations, so it's harder for them to just emerge out of holes, so they have to slowly push into the city, but they are pretty much all the way through it, talking about how even a couple blocks away is now being attacked by the Locusts, and this is where you are introduced to some of the new members of the squad. As you go through, you get to talk to Anya, and she pretty much tells you how bad everything is going and how you guys are pretty much on your last leg at this point. You do get a couple new reinforcements, like this new character named Ben Carmine, which is Anthony Carmine's little brother. He is the youngest Carmine brother, and he ends up being like 17 to 18 years old and is pretty much the freshest soldier that you're going to be getting here. It is interesting to see the new conscripts and give you a genuine idea of like what their thoughts are and like how new they are to like the war. They only get trained for around a month before they are pretty much thrown into all the battles, which is kind of insane. After talking to Ben, though, you get to decide if you want to train him or not, which this is pretty much quote unquote you training. And if you do, you get a little bit more of a background on him. But because, like I did in the first game, I just kind of skipped out on the tutorial and headed into the first mission. This is where you end up getting attacked at the hospital that you guys are holding at, but you guys were all pretty much prepared for this, so you guys set up an ambush to attack them. But before this ambush ends up taking place, you end up meeting the only other character that is going to be part of your 4-man squad this time around, which ends up being Ty Kaliso. And this guy is a badass. He looks so cool, and he has like a huge like name around him, being the unkillable gear that is part of the crew. Aside from all that, the only other thing that is going on is Anya is talking to Dom about the whereabouts of Maria, and this plays a lot bigger role in this one than it did in the first, and showing like how annoyed he's getting at this point because it's been so long since the emergence and her disappearance that he doesn't really know if she's even alive at this point. But they did hear some rumors about where she was, which Anya tells him about, but then it's briefly cut off immediately after to go and like join for the attack against the Locust here. The one thing I noticed though, right when we got into the combat, is it feels so much better in this one. I don't even know why. It honestly just feels a lot more smooth, and just like all the guns feel a little bit better to like work with, which is kind of surprising because it's legit a worse version, or should be a worse version than the remaster, but it just feels better than the remaster overall, which is kind of like an odd thing, but I'm completely fine with that. As I played through, the one thing I did realize though is I don't remember any of this plot, and I'm happy I don't, because when I went through this and played through it again, all the twists and turns that happened throughout the story completely hit just like it was my first time ever playing it, which I'm really happy about. The one thing that you'll notice as you go through, not only are you collecting cog tags, now you find these pieces of paper and stuff like that, and they give you little lore glimpses of like what's going on in these locations, which I really do like talking about this new thing called the rust lung. The rust lung is a new pandemic that has kicked in after the explosions in the emulsion, and a lot of the humans are getting affected with it, and they end up dying from it. They don't really tell you about that part of it, just because they're trying to keep it contained and like quiet so that people don't panic, because you know they're already on their last leg. We do not need another problem going on aside from the locust, so they kind of hide the disease as much as possible, which is kind of like an interesting thing, but it makes sense. But as you make your way through and fight a decent amount of the enemies, they end up going into a full-scale retreat against you guys. And this is where it leads into Dom pretty much going kind of crazy. He ends up hearing that they seen Maria a couple days ago, but sadly she ended up leaving this like containment. So he ends up beating the shit out of this car, which is fair, and you can honestly feel his like pain there. Even though you don't know her personally, you can actually feel for his character, which is kind of surprising. With a lot of games, when they try to make you like have this type of feeling, it's hard to like get that exact feeling when you haven't met the character, but this one is really good at conveying what they're actually feeling. But after pushing through and wiping out the locust and hearing that dialogue, you end up heading on to the next location where you guys are going to be the aggressor this time around, which is kind of interesting. So instead of being like the defense type of group where we try to defend ourselves from the locust, we are going to attack their main base. At least we think it's the main base. So you guys head off to go up to this mountain and hit this peak where you guys are going to drill down into the tunnels and attack from where they live. You end up sending like a huge fleet, and this looks awesome. Just seeing like the whole bunch of vehicles like driving up the hills and stuff, and all the helicopters around them for like a huge convoy, makes for like an actual like army. Like unlike in the first game where you kind of just feel like you're just like this lone squad just running around doing everything, which is kind of bizarre in a way. Like it kind of feels kind of lonely in the first one, where there's no one around you to like fill out these areas aside from just your crew, which is fine at least for the first game. So it gives you a lot more time to build on your cast that's like part of your crew. But in the second one, I'm happy they expanded upon that, introducing like an actual army and introducing a new character called Prescott, which is the chairman of the COG, which ends up giving you a speech about the invasion against the Locusts, which leads to you guys actually pushing in together. But he ends up giving a huge morale boost to the troops, like getting ready and amped up for this battle, and makes Prescott seem like an interesting character, but you end up finding out he's just another asshole that's a part of this like universe. Once you get back to Marcus, you end up seeing Baird on another vehicle, which is ran by another group, and he is leading his own squad into the mine. So is Ty, and so is Cole. Dom is the only one that's actually part of your crew, same with Ben, and you guys are going to be the other drop crew that's going to be dropping in a different location. So when you're going through this part, you end up getting ambushed by the enemies, but before we get into that, you end up meeting the driver of your crew, and that is Dizzy. He ends up playing a decent role throughout the games, but he isn't too much of like a main character, at least in this one. After you get hit by this ambush, it gets really fucking hectic. Like there's just people shooting everywhere, and it makes for a really intense but exciting scene, at least to me. Like you legit have reavers flying around, which is like these aerial creatures that you only seen fly around in the first ones, but now they can land and attack you, which makes it for like more of like spice to the gameplay, which I do like. When you're fighting these though, you also have just grunts coming out of the ground. Also these ones called grapplers who grapple up onto the vehicles and try to take them over, making for a pretty much chaotic scene where you just have to hold out as much as possible, watching your centaurs, which are the tanks, get blown up, and same with your other vehicles and helicopters. All hell breaks loose. It makes for a very intense scene, which I honestly love. It makes me feel like I'm actually in a war and like actually on a battlefield. Unlike the first game, it did feel like I was in these battles, but not as much as it does here, showing like how vast the drone army is. Like when you end up getting to this one location, you see hundreds of them just running out of the ground, and all you can do is just shoot at them, but they just keep coming, and your turret can't keep up with it. It's kind of insane, making for just enjoyable gameplay overall. But as you make your way through this and a decent amount of your army ends up getting destroyed, you end up seeing Ty's vehicle get hit by these things called tickers, which are just these like little beetle looking things with bombs on their backs that just suicide bomb everything, which is kind of insane. They just run into his vehicle and blow it the hell up, and somehow miraculously Ty ends up being the one to survive, so I guess the name fits with it, like him being the unkillable cog, because his ass just walks out of it like it was nothing. The rest of his crew is dead. He's the only dude that survived. After doing this, though, you end up having to go on foot so that you can go around and destroy any of these tickers or ambushes on the way through, just to make sure that Dizzy doesn't end up getting blown the hell up on the way. So you end up pushing through with Ty, Ben, and Dom, and as you make your way through, you end up heading to a tunnel, and this is kind of like a spooky area. You don't really get that many spooky parts of this game, so I'll give this one at least that. But it's just like an alright little area where you fight some reters and tickers, and after getting through it, you head into the last little location where it introduces you to by far my favorite weapon, the mortars. It ends up hitting like this location, and Dizzy said he's not going to move up until you take out these mortars for him. So you end up hopping off and going up into a hotel room. At least I did, because this game also introduces you back to the idea of being able to choose which way you want to push, but it's a lot more impactful, at least in this one, to me. I ended up taking the hotel way in, and after we push through and take out a decent amount of mortars, you get to use them, and these things pack a fucking punch. It's awesome just watching them blow up everything. The only challenge to it is that you have to kind of like guess where to shoot it at, but as long as you can get it down to like what the distance between you and them is, it makes for a really good weapon overall. I enjoy using them. Even when I do miss, it's just like, oh, that's on me. Like, I could have done better there. But once you actually kill a decent amount of them, you end up fighting a Brumac, which dies immediately if you drop a mortar on his head, which I did. So after doing that, you guys finally get to head into the mine. But before you actually get sent down, you guys get strapped in, and then a new antagonist of the game is introduced called Scourge. This guy comes in out of nowhere and cuts a whole goddamn tank in half, which is absolute, and like, it's just insanity. I don't know how he did that. It makes no damn sense, but okay, we'll go with it. He cuts that thing in half and then proceeds to go onto your vehicle to kill you, but Dizzy ends up stopping him, and so does Ty, and then this is where you don't know where they go. Like, you legit don't see them again. After this, they end up just getting split off, and you just have to hope that they made it through. So you guys head into the mines, you and Dom, and Ben ends up getting sent out by himself. So the first objective that you have is to go and try and find him and save him from whatever may be, depending on, like, you don't really know what ended up happening to him. So when you get down there, you end up finding Ben after he calls for reinforcements at his location. And, you know, Ben's a badass, so he was able to hold his ground and kill a decent amount of locusts. And you get up to him, and you guys help him to get, like, support, and then push on to, like, get farther into the mines. As you push through the mines, it's kind of cool just seeing all the drills coming through the sky from different squads that are actually breaching through, making the environment look a lot cooler. And not only doing that, but also adding a little bit more to, like, add some life to this aside from the locusts, adding these, like, weird little rock worms that are used for cover and stuff like that, which I do honestly enjoy, making these places a little bit more memorable than just being some whatever type of location that you're pushing through, which a lot of games would just have. So luckily, for some reason, Gears of War has, like, the best team, or did have the best team to work on it. So at least they had something interesting going on in each and every location. So as you push your way through and defend a couple squads and get supported by a couple squads, you end up seeing this, like, creature moving through the walls. And this is where you find out that Jacinto's, like, cities around them have been just getting hit by earthquakes and then collapsing down. And now you have finally found out what it was. It's just some big creature, but you end up finding out what that creature is later. As you push through, though, this introduces you to one of the newer enemies called the Cantus, which are pretty much the hype up gods for the locust. So anytime a locust is downed or takes a decent amount of damage, these things will scream at the top of their lungs. They're also known as shriekers, to give them pretty much a morale boost, which gives them back health and will revive any troop that is down around them, which is kind of insane. So what I would suggest is going for the Cantus immediately if you ever see them, and after killing those and pushing through, you end up finding out that the rubs and stuff have been down in these tunnels for longer than you expected. Like, these locations are actually set up and actually have, like, some type of civilization set up. But after making your way through one of their little fortresses that they have, you end up leading into this area where Jima, which is a city, is right above you, and you finally get to see what is sinking these goddamn cities. Scourge ends up flying in with this big ass beetle, which looks nasty as hell, and he starts screeching, and some big fucking worm just breaks through the wall and just completely annihilates this whole city. It collapses immediately down, and Marcus starts screaming into the comms to Anya that there's a big fucking worm that's just destroying these cities, which is kind of entertaining and kind of funny in a way. But this is what happened after the first game. Not only did they become a lot more aggressive after the first game, you actually accidentally woke these up by blowing up the tunnels, so you actually caused more of a problem by destroying these tunnels than you thought you did. You thought it would lead to, like, a good, like, resolution, but it ended up just causing even more problems for your like, humanity. But once that happens, you end up getting sent down to go and support and save any remaining survivors. A helicopter ends up crashing, so you're going that way to go and save them. But on your way, you end up seeing some of the stranded, and they end up getting killed by this new enemy called the Blood Mounts, where it's just these nasty looking mounts with like a dude just sitting on its back. I don't even know what the hell they're supposed to be. But after you kill those things are tough, by the way. You end up pushing your way to the next location. And this location is where you end up meeting up with your next member, Cole.
Marcus, is that gotta be? Nobody plays this game like me. Nobody.
After watching Cole annihilate a couple of these locusts, you guys end up teaming up and heading on to try and find Baird. And this is where you guys head farther into the mine and save him from this like coffin looking thing. And after getting him out, you end up learning something new, which is processing. So all the locusts have been doing, not only have they been killing people, but they've been also kidnapping them and putting them into this thing called processing. And after this happens, we're not sure what it does. So you end up breaking onto this barge to kind of find out what it is. And there's no one on the first one, but you kill everyone on it. But once you get into the second one, this is where you finally get to meet up with Ty, and this happens.
Ty, is that you? Marcus, we got more locusts on the way. Ty, let's go. Cole, Baird, cover that door. Carmine, Dom, guard the rear. Ty! No!
When this happened, I honestly did not expect him to just blow his brains out in front of you. It was absolutely insane, but it shows you how bad the torturing it is from like the locusts, which broke the man that is supposed to be like unbreakable and unkillable and made him take his own life, which is honestly insane. But after Ty ends up dying, you guys end up heading off into the next location where you are trying to extract to get the hell out of there. But as you're making your way there, you end up finding out that the worm is heading your way, so it kind of becomes like a timed event. So you guys rush to the roof of this building. As long as you're like pushing your way up there, you're fighting through a decent amount of locusts. But when you hit the roof, it ends up cutting to a cutscene where Ben is just getting a little too full of himself, where he just keeps shooting at the locust. And you know what? I gotta respect the homie. But he ends up getting shot. He ends up being all right, though. You pull him back onto the helicopter, and you guys start flying up to get out of there. But then the giant-ass worm breaks through the wall, and he ends up sliding off into his mouth, which is awesome. Why they gotta keep doing my homie Carmine like that? Right after that happens, your helicopter is also eaten by this big ass worm. So once you actually are eaten by this big ass worm and you're inside him, your first objective is to go and try to find Ben and see if he actually survived the fall into him, which he did. You end up finding him a little bit into it, and he's getting eaten alive by these little tick looking things, and beautiful. It was beautiful just seeing his insides everywhere. I don't know why they kind of keep doing this to my favorite characters in each and every game, but you know, this is what they want to do. They just want to torture me for the rest of my life. So after seeing him being killed, you end up having to run around inside this worm. This part isn't all too bad. It's all right at best. All you have to really do is just go around and just cut up these hearts. And as you make your way through, it just kind of becomes like a timed event. So you have to run away, cut some of the veins off of the heart, and then run into the next place and do the same thing over and over again. Like I said, it's like okay overall. The only thing I can really give this mission aside from that is that it at least has a cool little area that you get to explore. But that's all that's really going for it, at least to me. After dealing with the worm, you guys cut your way out of them, and this leads to your next objective where you have to go to this facility called New Hope. This was a very classified document that not even Hoffman has even heard about, so this is all just becoming unclassified for everyone around you. This is pretty much only given to you just because desperate times call for desperate measures, and you guys are sent to get up there, so you take a centaur to the location, and when you get there, this is more like of the horror vibe that I was looking for that isn't really all too much prominent in this game aside from this level. As you make your way through, you end up seeing different types of enemies like the locusts and flame troopers, which give you flamethrowers, and a couple unique ones that I won't go into until we get to them. As you make your way through the facility and kill a decent amount of wretches, you end up meeting with this AI that ends up talking to you about how you are not allowed into the facility and you're not going to get any farther, so you end up blowing up the goddamn door so that you can get in, and you make your way through the facility. And as you make your way through the facility, he keeps trying to stop you from going farther in, and he has a whole bunch of traps set up throughout the place, which is kind of annoying, but it makes for kind of an interesting mission overall. As you make your way through though, you find out there's a lot of key things that make this part interesting. Not only have the people that have been working in this facility been testing on children, they have been trying to find out how to deal with rust lung. The thing that makes it interesting about this area is rust lung wasn't really a prominent thing talked about, but of course it was held from you from the government, and this has been a prominent issue around these locations. But instead of actually addressing it, they've been keeping it under cover, wraps. But now they are finally letting it out so that you can actually try to deal with the threat of it, just because so many people are getting hit with it now after the explosions. They can't really hide it as much as they used to. So as you go through the facility, you learn a little bit more about the rust lung and how they actually just stole orphans and stuff from mines, and not even just orphans sometimes, so that they could test it on them to see if there's ways to deal with rust lung and be able to be around its emotion without having any side effects from it, which is kind of insane. And this is also where it kind of shows you a character and talks about this woman that ends up playing a major role later on in the story. As you make your way through though, you kind of find out, as long as you're reading between the lines, that the locusts were kind of just made by the government. They ended up making these creatures that were supposed to be immune to the emotion, that ended up escaping the facility and then ended up disappearing underground, which is pretty much, the locust that you see. But as you make your way through, you end up turning off the AI and downloading the coordinates to find this mountain where the actual main operations of the locust is. And after you shutting him down and getting this location, you guys make your way out, and this is where you are introduced to some of the test subjects called the Sires. These things are only in this mission, but they show you what these test subjects ended up becoming because of all these trial and error types of tests that they had, which makes them look like actual grotesque monsters. And Dom ends up having a morality thing here where he honestly doesn't know if he should be trying to help them or just put them out of their misery. You guys end up having to kill them just because there was no other option at this point. They were aggressive, so you had to put them down, but it's not because they wanted to be aggressive. One of the side effects of the rust lung is that they have the tendency of being a lot more aggro, so it's not like they wanted to be, but it's just kind of built into them. It's ingrained into them, which really is a sad way of it going. But this is when the locusts end up showing up to try to attack you, and this is where the flame troopers come in, which introduces one of my favorite weapons, which is the Scorcher, where you just get to kind of burn some of the enemies alive, and you don't really get to use them all too often, so it's really entertaining when they actually do give you this weapon to try out. But once you make your way out of this area, you end up heading back to the Centaur and getting back in, and this is when you end up heading to the mountain, and this has you playing through a mission where you actually get to drive the Centaur around and blow shit up. And this mission's pretty fun. It makes you feel kind of powerful in a way, so you just run around just blowing up locust bases that are around and driving through ice and trying not to fall into the water and stuff, making for a little bit of a challenging mission that I like overall. But after you end up driving through the mountain and end up finding the location to get in. You fight some Rumax, and after you kill them, you end up heading in and finding a stranded base that's inside the mountain. This ends up being the dude that was at the gas station. He ends up bitching you out immediately after you see him, because you are kind of part of the reason why he's in this tunnel. And it's because all these people are hiding in the tunnels because they found out it's actually safer to be in a tunnel instead of actually being above ground, because that's where they were expecting you to be. So they've all been hiding underground, but because of you guys coming in there, you have just caused the same problem that they just escaped from. So now they pretty much are screwed at this point. This is where Baird and Cole kind of leave the squad and escort them out, and you tell them that you will set up a grind lift area so that they can just like drill right into where they have to go for the actual base of the Locust. So after doing so, you end up heading farther into the mines, and this is where you end up heading to a dock where you have to steal a boat. Of course, the boat that you end up going for ends up sinking because it was already like a shitty little platform. But this is where the dock ends up getting destroyed, and you're pretty much riding a little raft that is just floating in the water, and you fight a decent amount of locusts, but it leads into like your first ever like little mini boss in the game. And I honestly don't really like this mini boss. As you fighting through, you end up getting onto one of the locust boats, and this is where it actually starts. It's just a big ass fish, and all you have to really do is shoot at its weak point and then throw a bomb into its throat until it blows up like 3 times, and after that it ends up dying, making for like an okay boss. But all the fights that happened throughout this was pretty fun, at least, so at least that was there for it. But after doing that, you guys head deeper into the mine because you end up crashing into a waterfall and end up behind all of the locusts. And this is where one of the interesting parts of the game cuts in, where you and Dom end up getting into an argument where you guys are arguing on where to go next. Now, the objective is for you to go and destroy this facility and get rid of the Nexus. But instead, Dom is like, well, my wife, Maria, might be down here, because the dude that was part of the stranded crew ended up saying that he's seen her not too long ago being part of a different group, but was captured not too long ago, like not even like a month ago or something like that. So you have to decide which one to do. You don't really get to decide. It actually just gets decided by Marcus. He ends up deciding to go down because he did the same thing when his father was under attack, and he feels like his friend deserves the same chance as he did. So you guys head the other way and kind of sneak around trying to find this like location where his wife is being held. And as you push your way through, you end up finding a terminal that you guys use, and this is where you end up finding out where exactly to look by looking for this symbol. So you go around for a little bit, going through a couple of these terminals until you find the right one, and once you do, you finally get to find his wife. And yeah,
Maria. Maria.
Dom.
No, no, no. No, baby. No, 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 no. What did they do to you? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Maria. I tried to find you. God, I did. No, please, no. Maria. God damn it, it's me, Dominic. It's Dominic. Marcus, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, man. She...
No. It's okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you so much.
This part is really heart-wrenching. It's really tough watching Dom having to make the choice to actually put his wife out of her misery and head on to the next location. It's crazy that he was willing to keep fighting after this. Personally, I think this would have just been my breaking point. After all that he had to go through, not only watching Ty get tortured, but pretty much having to think about what his wife had to go through for her last couple hours, and seeing that she legit got lobotomized, so she has no way of controlling her own body at that point, which is really sad to see. Aside from that, you also find out that this facility is being used for slaves, and they are mining for resources for pretty much reinforcing the armies, which is insane. So it's just I don't know. I personally could not have went farther from here, so I can salute Dom for even doing this. It would have just been my breaking point personally. But after doing this, you end up talking to Dom, and he says he wants to go and just push through and kill as many locusts as you can. You get to decide here if you want to do that or not. And if you decide to do stealthily, you can end up running into the person that ran the last group, which was Franklin. But I ended up not going stealthy, so I just went running gun, so I didn't actually get to see him. And we just went and blew some shit up. And so we got farther into the Nexus, where we ended up setting up the grind lift beacon. So they ended up sending everyone down. And this is where Baird and Cole finally get to rejoin your crew. And after they rejoin your crew, you guys push through a decent amount of the Nexus and start beating the shit out of them. But what's crazy is it's going a little too well. Not too many armies are actually attacking you, and you kind of get confused why. And even I was kind of confused. I was like, okay, this seems kind of easy. But then you kind of start seeing things happening. As you're going through, you end up seeing locusts running from explosions and pretty much just a whole bunch of gunfire that definitely could not be made by your groups, mostly just because of how many people you guys sent down. There was no way that there was enough of you to be making the locusts actually retreat at this part. So as you're making your way through, you end up finding this one locust that is glowing, and it plays more into the idea of what is going to be happening in the next game. It pretty much hints at it, but it doesn't go fully into it. But now you understand there is something else attacking the locust, and is the reason why they have pushed above ground to attack the humans. As you go through, you find out the glowing ones are actually just other locusts attacking each other, so you're not sure what's happening, but you know something wrong is going on, and you're not sure how to think about it. But at least for right now, it is working in your favor, so you're completely fine with it. But as you make your way through and you end up getting attacked by some of the glowing ones, you end up getting onto a lift and heading farther down to go and try to fight the queen. As you make your way down, you end up fighting a decent amount of enemies, and this is where you get to split off and go into different directions, making for a kind of fun gameplay where you either get to fight with Cole or another member. And all I did was usually chose the top side to defend the crew, and it's just a whole bunch of splitting off segments where you had to defend each other, which is kind of fun overall. As you make your way through though and get to the throne room, this is where you end up getting to see the queen, and she ends up talking her shit. She actually knows who you are. She names you off immediately, and she knows your father, which it makes more for like the plot, which is interesting. So after she talks some shit, she ends up running off, and Scourge ends up becoming the main boss fight. Baird and Cole end up chasing after her, so you and Dom end up being the ones to actually fight him. And this is more of like a gimmicky boss where you have to like rapidly press B to like stop him from like chainsawing you in half, and you have to destroy his weapon. Then the rest of the time you're hiding behind cover, taking out his enemies that push you, and then a pillar, and then the same thing happens 3 times. And after doing it for 3 times, he runs away like a little shitter, and you have to follow up with like Baird and Cole, and you find out that she escaped, so nice job on those two, just letting her get away. And after doing that, you guys push your way to these Reavers to get on them and ride away. Before we get into the next location, the one interesting thing that you find out is that they're going to try to destroy Jacinto. So you guys come up with a plan to flood Jacinto first so that you can take out the tunnels and destroy the Nexus. So it's just a race against time at this point, where the Locusts are trying to push as fast as possible to wipe out the humans that are left there, so that they can get the victory, but you guys are trying to push back and do the opposite direction where you flood it and destroy them instead. This is where you and your crew end up hopping on some Reavers and start riding them back to Jacinto to race against them to hopefully stop them from destroying the rest of the human race, pretty much. You end up fighting through a whole bunch of enemies and saving some of the crew that's left down there. And after doing that, you guys make your way out, but this is where Scourge attacks you again, but on his big ass bug again. So all you have to do at this point is just keep shooting at him nonstop, and this mission is all right. I liked defending like the crew, but the fight against Scourge wasn't all too memorable. Just having you shoot at the bug nonstop and shooting at like certain weak points so that he doesn't kill you. I died like twice here because for some reason I just could not hit the tentacles at all. So after destroying the bug though, he ends up flying the hell off and then dying. The way he dies is very disappointing as well, making it seem very unmemorable for like an enemy, mostly for a guy that cut a whole ass tank in half. He didn't really do much in this part, which is disappointing to me at least. But after doing that, you finally get back to Jacinto and join for like the last defense of the city. And you and Hoffman actually get to work together here, which is kind of interesting. Prescott ends up being a little shit and sitting inside and getting ready to leave. So you and Hoffman head out and Dom, and you guys defend the rest of the city, making for like a valiant defense of it, which is kind of fun to go through. As you're defending the city, you actually have helicopters and stuff flying around, like whatever's left of the city is there, trying to do like the last stand, making for an overall pretty exciting mission. But after you end up wiping them out and actually pushing them back, you guys make your way to the tunnels to try to make it collapse. So you and Dom push your way that way and kill off a decent amount of enemies, heading into the hole that's already down there. And this leads to you guys breaking down a building and falling on top of a Brumac. And this is where you get to actually take control of a Brumac and destroy a whole bunch of enemies, which is honestly pretty entertaining. When you push through this part and kill these dudes, they have no chance. They don't do any damage to you. Actually, most of the time they're just running away, making for overall just like a cool little mission where you feel like you're unstoppable. But after you take out a decent amount of these enemies and push through, you find these 3 pillars that you have to destroy to sink the city, like for the water. So after you end up pushing far enough and destroy these pillars, the helicopter flies down with a bomb to blow it up to make it fully collapse so that the water can come in. The thing is destroyed by the Brumac because the Brumac just starts swinging around like it's trying to hit some goddamn flies and destroys it. But this is where something interesting happens. while he's in the emulsion, he ends up starting to form into a different creature and becomes like this huge fucking blob while in the emulsion. And this is where you guys hop back into the other helicopters that's down there, and you end up destroying it to cause it to explode. But because of like how it works with the other ones, for some reason, whenever they are glowing, for some reason they want to explode, which they don't understand yet what it is, but it's being caused by the emulsion. So you hit it with the hammer down for a couple times, and then once it explodes, it ends up blowing up the whole thing, and the city ends up flooding in, and that's where the game ends. This game was overall really entertaining. I enjoyed everything about it. Like all the missions felt very memorable. All of like the plot twists are insane. All the cast are really interesting. I feel like we should have got more time with Ty at least though. Ben, I thought he got a decent amount of time with him, but you don't get to learn enough about Ty for me to feel too much of an impact from him. I understand if you go and read more, you'll actually get a little bit more behind him. And at least with the new game Emergence leg day, we're going to be getting a little bit more on him, which I'm happy to see. But the gunplay feels overall better. The new enemies that you get also feel so much cooler. The amount of different weapons that they added in here, like the mortars, the scorcher, and stuff like that, just make for an overall better experience, at least to me. The environments that you also get to explore look a lot better as well. Even though it's not a remaster, I would love to see how this would look in a remaster. It would look so beautiful. A lot of these places look a lot more memorable, and so does like the enemies that you actually get to see. And I'm kind of surprised they haven't tried to make a remaster of this yet. But overall, it's just really good. We're not going to be going over the multiplayer with this one just because I just wanted to go over the highlight of what multiplayer was with just the first one, because they all kind of feel the same. But I will be going over the other side mode that they added, which is Horde mode. Horde mode is pretty basic in this one, but it is like an interesting little aspect to the game where if you want to go and fight some AI and go through like a wave defense type thing, they have that on the side now for players that are into more like fighting the enemies that are just bots and just having like a breeze of a time. And I really do enjoy that, and I love the idea of that being on the side for anyone that actually just wants to chill out for a little bit and just fight some locusts instead of playing against some major sweats that are part of FaZe Online. But overall, I do really enjoy this game, and I highly recommend checking this one out as well if you do play the first one, or even if you don't play the first one. This one is just amazing. Gears of War 3 starts with like a dream sequence where you get to see what actually happened to your father and why you thought that he blew up and died. And then you wake up. Before we get into that part, the gunplay and stuff feels around the same as it does in the first two games. Not that much smoother than what it was in the second one, so I'm not really going to get all too much into it. But this mission was overall alright, and actually it builds onto the plot a little bit more, giving the reason why you were court-martialed, even though I did talk about it in the previous ones. As you go through and finish this up though, you end up waking up and finding out that you're on some ship. The one thing that is interesting that you really wouldn't get much of an idea of is that the cog is no more. It is completely gone. Prescott has stepped down as the chairman. Hoffman has left to a place called Anvil Gate, and whatever is remaining of the group has stayed on this ship that is just in the middle of the water near this place called Hanover. Most of the cog is just completely wiped out after the flooding of Jacinto, and just hasn't regained where it was since then, which is an interesting idea. But as you make your way through this area, you end up going back to Dom and you collect him to go upstairs because you guys are being called over the intercom. As you guys make your way, you are introduced to another new character named Jace, and Jace is the newest part of the crew, and he honestly does not play that much of a role in the game, and he's a very unmemorable character. I know he plays more of a plot in the comics, but in this game he doesn't really do much, and I did hear at some point in time he was supposed to die, which I think would have added a little bit more to the character, but he ends up surviving in this one because they ended up rewriting that. The only other person that you end up meeting is Anya, who is now part of the crew. It's kind of interesting. I am completely fine with that, and it shows that desperate times have gotten to the point where even the people that are not even supposed to be part of the battleground are now part of the war, which is interesting. Prescott ends up making his way to the ship, and he ends up giving you this chip to watch this video. And once you actually get to watching it, you end up finding out that your father is alive. But before you can even get to that part, you end up fighting this new threat called the Lambent. The Lambent are this new enemy that is made up of what we've been fearing, which is the emulsion. After the second game with the flooding of the water into the tunnels and stuff, the emulsion was able to spread into the water, which made the spread of the parasite pretty much. So now all the emulsion is in the water, so anything that you drink or something like that, it's everywhere. And now it's like sprouting out of the ground and pretty much out of control. This is the reason why the locusts actually attacked you in the first two games, is because they were trying to get away from this threat. But they also did not like the humans, so they were trying to wipe them out as quick as possible so they could take over the above ground and pretty much recoup up there, and then maybe take back the underground at some point, or just stay above and just never deal with the threat overall. It makes it a little bit more of an interesting plot, and I really do like the idea around that. Like being like the overall threat actually ends up being the Lambent and not even a locust at this point. Locust is so severely wounded after what you guys did in the second game, leaving only like short spurts of like groups that are left that are actually still alive in the game. But as you fight your way through the Lambent and you actually get this wrapped up, you end up hearing what Adam Phoenix has to say, and you find out that he has been alive but was captured by Prescott and put at a new location called Azura. He ends up, for some fucking reason, just moving him there because all the top scientists did, and so are the rich people, and that's why they all just magically disappeared when the war hit, is because they've been capturing all these people and moving them there so that they can survive throughout the war and hopefully just be able to come out of hiding after it's all wrapped up. But you know, because of the war, how it went, they ended up not calculating how it was actually going to go and weren't expecting everyone to actually get killed from this war. So as you push through and fight some more of the Lambent, they end up just sprouting out of everywhere on the ship, to the point where it becomes a little too much for them, and even some big ass Lambent fish comes out of the water and starts attacking the ship, to the point where everything just goes, all hell breaks loose at this point. So the ship starts getting ripped into pieces, and you guys are just trying to hold off the Lambent, but it's just too much for you guys. And I really do like this. It's pretty much just showing you that like the stakes are to the point where not even like the main characters can even handle the actual threat that's happening. You end up calling for support from Baird and Cole, which are part of like a mission for like a supply run for the ship, and they end up coming into support to kill the fish. But before we get to that, you get to try out a new vehicle called like the Razorback, where it's just like a big mech that you jump into that has a minigun and also missiles that it can shoot. This vehicle is actually kind of fun to use. I really enjoy just being able to mow enemies down, and you get to use it around a couple times throughout the game, which I actually do like. You end up fighting the fish though at the end and pushing it towards this bridge, where they end up coming up with a plan to kill it because the guns on this mech are not strong enough. They end up dropping a crate of fucking tickers onto it, and it ends up blowing up the ship and also killing the fish, leading to you getting like a flashback to an hour ago, joining you with like Cole Squad, which I actually do like, giving you both perspectives about what actually was going on during this time. Cole and his crew, made up of Baird, Sam, and another Carmine, which is Clayton Carmine, are making their way through Hanover trying to find supplies, and you guys are just looking through all like these destroyed, stranded outposts, trying to find anyone that's alive that is willing to trade. The first people that you find are awesome and give you some of the best codes in the game.
I'll give you a side of bacon for her, though.
Oh, bacon.
Hey, take the deal, Cole. I haven't had bacon in 6 months.
Because you guys weren't all too helpful, you guys make your way to a grocery store to find more supplies, and this is where you're introduced to another Lambent threat, where this weird looking creature that you attack ends up being able to form into 3 different types, where either it spreads 2 long arms and 1 big head. It can spread into like a weird looking palm tree or something like that, and another form, which is kind of cool. I actually do like the different types of variants of Lambent that you get, and I'm happy that they weren't just some generic locusts that you're fighting that are just glowing in this one. They actually added something to make them a little bit more charming in this. But after wiping them out and heading into the grocery store, you fight a decent amount of them again, but you end up finding some food, and this is where you get to use another one of the Razorbacks, but this one is just a construction one, so it only can pick up stuff. It can't really attack anyone aside from curb stomping people. So you take the supplies outside, kill some more Lambent, give it to the helicopter, and head on to the next base. And this is where you end up meeting up with another stranded outpost. And you guys help and support and kill everyone that's outside of it. And they are willing to trade with you because they know who the Coal Train is, who is the mascot of the Cougars, pretty much, even though he was one of the team members of the Cougars. And Hanover is actually his hometown, so they all actually know him and love him, and they give him a huge supply of ammo at this part, which is kind of awesome. And it shows that even now, even though with all this bad stuff happening, just having coal there was enough of a morale boost for these people to keep on going, which is kind of cool in a way. But after you get some ammo and stuff, you head on to the last location, which is the stadium. You quote unquote are going there for another supply run, but it's more just him trying to reminisce what's going on in life, which is fair because they've been fighting a non-stop war. It makes sense that he would want to slow down for a minute and check out something that he used to love to do. So you guys make your way down to the stadium and you meet up with some more fans that are inside, leading to a Lambent attack where you help and defend the stranded from getting killed. And this leads to Cole having a huge reminiscent thing where he gets to reminisce a whole bunch of stuff that he did during his thrashball career. And you get to watch this scene of him beating up some locust and grabbing a bomb and then going and placing it on something, and then he starts doing his victory lap and blows the fuck up, which is one of my favorite scenes that I've seen in the game. But after he gets blown up, he gets saved by Barrett and stuff and pulled out, and oh my gosh, the Lambent just come out of nowhere and take over this whole stadium. The one thing I haven't said so far is how beautiful this is. It's not as gray and sluggish and kind of ugly in a way, dire as it used to be in the other games, but it is more like a sun and cheery little vibe. It's not all the way there, which I'm fine with, but it gives you a little bit more than just the dark and kind of depressing vibe, which I'm completely fine with, showing the graphics of this game being absolutely beautiful, and all the characters still look really good and honestly don't look all too bad for a very old game at this point. I find these missions so far overall really fun and really interesting to go through, which is kind of surprising. Mostly after playing all 3 of these games in a row, I thought some of these would get kind of repetitive and tedious, but none of them have actually been all too bad, and I just couldn't stop playing it. I just played these games multiple days in a row without ever getting a burnout from it, which is kind of surprising. But after saving, well, quote unquote saving the stadium, it gets attacked again by 4,000 other Lambent. They bitch you out because they're oh, the cog always brings in the problems. Screw these people at this point. This is not a cog issue. This is just a world issue. Don't get me wrong. Every single problem that has been caused by the cog, technically, we are the reason why the Lambent have become a threat above ground, but we also are the reason why so many cities have been sunk as well, and why the locusts have become more aggressive. So I guess they aren't all too wrong, but they end up telling us to head to the bridge, that there is supposed to be another stranded crew up there, but they're a lot more aggressive. So you guys make your way there and zip line down to it, and then find out this is actually a locust outpost that was built by the locusts. They actually are to the point where they have no actual supplies at this point because of what we did in the Nexus and completely wiping them out. Now they are using old weapons from the Pendulum War, which is kind of cool. So you get to actually see the original Retro Lancer, which is a bayonet instead of a chainsaw, which I think is actually kind of cool. You either get to pick these up, and when you use them, it's like a bayonet charge. So you like charge into the enemy and pick them up onto your like bayonet, and like you can throw them around, which is really cool. I actually really enjoyed like this new weapon that they decided to add way late into the games. But it makes like the gameplay and like gun flow a lot better at this point. But after you push through and kill a decent amount of the enemies inside, like all the new locusts and stuff, you push your way and then get your comms called by Marcus, where he tells you that he needs support on the ship. And this leads to you doing the one scene that just happened at the end of what happened with Marcus, with you guys dumping a crate of tickers onto it and blowing up the ship, leading to you guys also falling off the bridge and landing on shore after. After this, you guys look around for Marcus and end up finding him at a different part of the shoreline and waking him up, and then you go back to playing as Marcus. You make your way up the hill and try to find Prescott, so you kill a decent amount of enemies and find him with Anya and stuff. And as you guys protect Prescott, he ends up dying, but he ends up giving you a key to unlock more information about where Azura is. Before all this happens, I want to say this mission is alright overall, introducing different things like the tickers being able to pick up weapons and eat them. I think that shit's stupid as hell, but I guess make them a little bit more interesting. If they don't have a bomb, at least they have something like that. But aside from that, there's nothing all too interesting about this mission, and it was kind of like a throwaway just to show you like the ending off of Prescott with him just dying at the end. And this is where you break off and go with Baird, Cole, and Dom, so the original crew, and you guys head into the next location to head to Anvil Gate. The reason why you're heading here is because Hoffman has a part of the key to actually unlock this thing so that you can actually find Azura. So you have to head all the way there to actually unlock it. Before we can get to Anvil Gate though, we have to play through one of my least favorite parts of the games, which is the desert biome. I actually fucking hate this area, like with a burning passion. It's so boring. I don't like the look of the location. I don't like the enemies that they introduce or anything like that. As you get to this location, you find out that you want to ride gas barges because there's no way that you're gonna walk on foot to Anvil Gate, so you look around for those. And on your way, you end up introducing a new enemy called the Baby Corpser, where it's just like these really annoying corpsers that have like armor on their helmets and like have only certain weak points. So you have to like keep shooting at them, but the issue with them is when you do enough damage, they'll just go underground, stick their foot out, stab you a couple times, and go back underground. And they'll do this non-stop throughout each fight. And it's not like you're fighting one of them, you fight like 2 to 3 at a time, so it makes it really annoying for like the gunfights with them. But after you take out a couple of them, you lead farther into the base and you get to fight a decent amount of the enemies. At least the trenches look cool as you're pushing through, but aside from the trenches and like learning that how they set up like tickers and stuff, like how they put the bombs and stuff on, this mission's not all too interesting. Actually, this chapter overall isn't that great, but when you get to Anvil Gate is where it all kicks back up into high gear. But as you go through this place, killing a decent amount of locusts, you lead into a boss fight that at least is somewhat okay, where you fight a corpser that has no armor on, and after you defeat it, you head on to the next location. But the thing that makes it interesting about this boss fight is anytime that you do enough damage, a swarm of corpsers will attack you, but they all don't have armor on because they're not bred for battle yet. So what's makes it kind of an interesting like little breeding ground, pretty much showing you the finale of like what happens to the corpsers, how you wipe them out in a way, which I think is interesting. After killing her though and heading out, you meet up with the queen where she talks her shit about Adam and you, and pretty much trying to deter you from pushing on. But you end up pushing past that, and you end up killing enough enemies and heading up to the gas barge and taking one. After taking the gas barge, you head off and you get a comm call from Dizzy, so you guys grapple down and go and save Dizzy from this little fortress that was ran by the Stranded that are now dead. After helping him defend this little base, which was an alright mission, you guys head back into the gas barge and you end up having like a shootout with like a whole bunch of other gas barges and reavers that are flying around, making for actually kind of a fun sequence. I enjoyed defending this barge from a whole bunch of different enemies, like while they tried to get onto yours and shoot it down, and then having the queen fly in at the end trying to destroy it made for an overall pretty enjoyable mission. The other thing that made this interesting too is if you look down, this is where you actually get to see that the locusts are going to invade Anvil Gate, so you also get to see like a huge army pushing towards this location, which makes it really cool. But after you end up crashing, Hoffman ends up finding you guys, and of course he was in the right place, right time. He gets you guys back into his vehicle and you guys head towards Anvil Gate and you catch him up on everything, and he is fucking astonished by some of the information that you guys give him. But once you actually get to Anvil Gate, you guys do a huge defense before you can actually open like the key that you need to. And this mission is by far my favorite mission in any of the Gears games. This whole mission is very intense. It's really flavorful. It has a lot of stuff going on, not only having traps, you defending certain locations, also pushing outside the gates to go and help Anya and them get into like the walls because they showed up late. Making for a very exciting and intense mission overall. As you're pushing through and like killing all these enemies, it also introduces the Berserker that is a Lambent. And the way you kill this one, instead of using the Hammer of Dawn, which I always thought was like a gimmicky type of fight, now its chest opens and you can shoot it in its like weak spot, which makes it a lot more interesting for a boss fight, at least to me, which I honestly do appreciate from the devs making this. But yeah, this area is awesome. The scenery looks beautiful. I love like the rain. It adds to like the aesthetic of the area during this like invasion, and like the locust hordes that are pushing through makes it feel like there's just never ending, and makes it feel like there's no way of you actually winning. But once you actually push them back, it makes for an overall great mission. But after you get this done, you end up unlocking Azura and find out where he is, and it's covered by this hurricane that is made by the government, of course. So that's the reason why you didn't know where he was, or no one knew where they were, is because this place was not seeable. But of course, you find out that the locusts have taken control of this location. Who knows how? They don't even really explain that either. At least in the games, they don't. They take over this location, so you have to make your way to it and go and save your father. On the way, you are given a couple vehicles. Hoffman and Bernie end up staying here to defend Anvil Gate, so the rest of you end up making your way out. And this leads into like a little vehicle segment where you have to fight a decent amount of enemies as you drive around. This is alright. It's kind of fun using the miniguns that they give you at this point, but it's not like the most like intuitive like gameplay. Like it's okay at overall, but I do enjoy actually going through it, so I don't really mind it. You guys end up heading to Dom's old home in Mercy because you guys need to refuel on some gas, and there was quote unquote some stranded that were in this area, but now it is completely empty. So once you actually get in there, you look around for survivors of like whatever happened, but you can't find anyone. But you do find like bombs that are on the pipeline, so you have to shut those down, and then you end up meeting up with a crazy guy that is trying to shoot you and try to stop you from turning them off, because he said there's something going on with the people and he doesn't understand what. You guys think he's crazy. He ends up running away for a decent amount of time until you find him dead. The reason why you find him dead though is you find out that the humans are also turning Lambent. The Lambent infected forms end up starting to attack you, so you have to push your way through them to actually get the pipes turned on so that you can get gas into the vehicles. And after pushing a decent way through, you end up seeing a gravesite where Maria was supposed to be buried, and this is what happens.
Maria. Baby, I'm sorry I couldn't bring you home. But you're with the kids now. That's home, yeah? I'll see you all again one day. Look, Marcus is busy saving the world again, so I gotta be there for him. Sleep tight, sweetheart.
I really love this scene, just seeing Dom actually give like a farewell to his wife and put the necklace on there with her charm on it. And, you know, pretty much being buried with her children in a way, even though she's not there in, like in spirit in a way. But as he places it there, you guys turn on the valve and the valve ends up getting stuck. So you have to use a knife. So Dom gives you his knife to turn it on. And after doing that, the Lambent go apeshit, and you guys push your way back to the vehicle. So you kill a decent amount of the hordes. And I want to say the environment, like the areas that you run through, look beautiful. Mercy looks like an actually amazing city to push it through. And I just love like the amount of like hordes that are pushing towards you. It's not too excessive to the point, but it also makes for a fun gameplay overall. But this is where you guys make it back to the gas pumps, and you guys end up getting overwhelmed immediately from behind, from the front, and even from the sides, because they just are growing from the ground, and you are getting attacked by the survivors that were in Mercy that have turned Lambent. And this is where Dom decides to make his split-second decision. This part killed me when I was younger, and it still does. It's insane that he decided to make this decision, but it was probably the best decision that he made. I think he feels like he made the right decision, and he really did. He was able to save the rest of the crew and make sure that everyone else was able to escape, which they did. You all end up heading back to the vehicles to leave after this, and it sucks because you don't really get to have like that last second like goodbye for Dom. He's just dead. and no one really talks to Marcus about it because they don't really know how he feels about it. Plus, they don't want to push him on the subject in any way. So after you guys head out, you guys head to a place called Char, which is a location that has been completely hit by the Hammer of Dawn back at like around the beginning of the war, and you can tell it's like a wasteland there. Surprisingly, there is some survivors there, so you are going there to actually get the feel that you were looking for in Mercy. And this is where you lead into another problem, and that is hostile humans that are walking around. This guy that keeps setting up like traps to attack you, but as you push your way through, you end up getting to where he actually lives. And this is where you guys are both attacked by Lambent, so you guys work together to kill them, and they let you into the city. This is where you end up meeting the man named Griffin, who runs the city, who prior to like all this happening ran the emotion like business in Char, which is kind of an interesting background for him and showing he's going to be kind of an asshole, which he is. He ends up capturing Dizzy, so you have to pretty much do as he says, but at least he says if you do what he wants you to do, he will give you emulsion. So you make your way to his other facility that is across the way. And on the way, you fight a whole bunch of Lambent, making for an okay like segment that you just push through. I do want to say this environment is beautiful. I love the way it's set up, showing like the last seconds of like these people running away from like these explosions and stuff, making the scene so much more dramatic and looks perfect for what they were trying to go for. But as you're pushing through, you end up getting into the next facility, and you find out everyone has one Lambent. Who would have thought that the emulsion would have turned them Lambent? So you have to kill your way through all these people and head all the way to the top where you get the fuel source and head back to the other side. But of course, the locusts end up attacking the other side, so you have to fight through to try to save Griffin and Dizzy. And after saving those two, you find out everyone else is dead, and Griffin is pissed off, and so is Marcus.
Okay, Griffin, we got your goddamn fuel. We're done.
You're done? They're fucking dead! My people are all dead! We survived hammer strikes, the grubs, the whole damn war, and then you show up and I lose fucking everybody! You fucking cod bastards! Everywhere you go, everything you do, it's always nothing but death, pain, and miseries! You piece of shit motherfucker!
I just lost my fucking brother, all right? You hear that? My brother! You and your tower and all this fucking emulsion can go to hell!
We'll settle this shit another time, Phoenix. You can count on that, bitch.
After watching Marcus bitch out Griffin, you guys head on to the next area, which is where the submarine is. You guys break in and fight through a decent amount of locusts that are defending this area, introducing you to the Armored Cantus. The Armored Cantus absolutely suck. It's just an enemy that doesn't take any damage unless it's explosive. So all you have to do at this point is just like throw grenades at them and then blow them up. And if you don't have grenades, if you do have like a flamethrower or incendiary grenade, at least those do damage to them as well. So I would like advise to use those as well. But as you make your way into the sub area, of course, there's a crack in the sub fans, so you have to find a replacement rotor. So you look around for those, but you also have to find a way of getting the fuel into the submarine, so you also have to go and do that as well. So this part is kind of, it's okay. Like, after getting both of them, you head back. The only interesting thing about this is that you get to use a Razorback. But aside from that, this mission's kind of whatever. You just fight through a whole bunch of locusts and kind of just isn't that fun. And so is the next mission, which I'll be honest. You, Sam, Anya, and Jace get into the submarine with Dizzy, and he drives you to the next location where Azura is, because the only way that you can actually get in there is if you go underwater. So as you push your way through, you fight a decent amount of fish and destroy mines, and that's kind of all that you do throughout this. It's not all too interesting. It's probably my least favorite like on the cart shooter thing that we've had throughout the games. I think the Centaur was a lot more entertaining, and so was like the cart that you just just drove around in the first game, personally. But after you get through and destroy some of the mines and stuff, at least the one thing that makes this interesting is that you get to see a sunken city, which looks awesome. But aside from that, it's not all too interesting. After you land though and get inside, you fight through your metro, and you end up getting to finally talk to your father, who is actually alive still in the facility. So your next objective is to try to make your way to him and save him from the locusts that have taken over the facility. The way you do this is pushing through the metros, and this is where you get another silverback to use, and you get this like 4 to 5 times in this game. I think it gets overused just like the Hammer of Dawn in like the first game, where you just kind of get a little too much to the point where it's just not even an interesting vehicle at this point. So when you drive it around, you get to use it for a decent amount of the time, just running around killing locusts as you make your way through. And after you kill a decent amount of them and push through, you end up having to find a way to turn off the generator so that the hurricane can stop, so that your reinforcements can get to you. As you make your way through and kill a good amount of these enemies and get to the generators and shut them down, this mission is like alright at best. Like I said, I think it's just because I played so many of them in a row, it has become kind of repetitive at this point in time. Mostly just because like some of these objectives are stuff I've done in the prior games, to the point where it's kind of like, okay. But after you get these generators turned off, you finally get your reinforcements to arrive, but sadly they will not land at the port until you deal with the threat that is there, which is like these weird looking siege catapults like that are made of like locusts. So after taking them out, they'll actually land. But the one thing that makes this area kind of interesting is that the UIR is what your reinforcements are. So at this point, the COG and the UIR are working together to take out the Locust threat, and same with the Lambent, which is kind of interesting, and it makes sense at this point in time that they would actually be allies at this point. So you guys push together after taking out some of the siege catapults, and even end up destroying a whole dam to wipe out some of them. And this is where it leads to you guys being able to get the rest of the people onto the land. You don't really get to see them. The only people that you actually get to see at this point is Cole and Baird. And once you get far enough in, you guys push into the hotel looking area, and these places look awesome. I mean, like, this area looks so cool. Like, the fights are okay just because, like I said, we've had them hundreds of times, but this environment that they have around this area looks amazing. And so is the combat at this point. I think the covers and stuff were set up a lot better in this mission than they were in a lot of the other missions in this game, to the point where it feels like they actually were barricaded and set up for like an actual battle here, which made for really enjoyable gameplay overall. But after you get inside and wipe out some more locusts, you guys get to an elevator where the Lambent started coming out of the ground, of course, because the hurricane is down. Now they are becoming a problem here as well. So you guys end up attacking them and killing them as you head up the elevator. The elevator ends up getting destroyed, and you fall into into Baird and Cole's elevator, and you and Anya climb into theirs, and then you guys fight your way to his room. And after you get to his room, after killing all of them, you find out that he has known about like the locusts and all this way before the war even started, which is kind of like a crazy like news flash. Before you even get to this part, you do kind of get this glimpse from the queen. She ends up trying to attack you, and you drop something on top of her bug to attack her, but she ends up telling you that he actually didn't know this before that, but he is the reason why you were confirmed on this like theory that this is actually true. So it's kind of an insane plot twist that I wasn't actually expecting when I first ever seen it, but you know that I know it now, it kind of makes sense. But it is a really interesting like part of the game. So after you end up learning this, you end up going with your father to destroy the emulsion. The issue is that the queen doesn't want you to do this, is because the locust will die as well, because he wasn't able to work that out of like the gimmick. So you guys head your way to the tower to finally take out like the actual threat of the emulsion by turning on this machine that will just wipe out anything that has enough of the emulsion DNA in it. So you guys will be perfectly fine just because it hasn't spread enough into your body, so it won't have too much an effect on you. So after doing this and turning on the machine, you are attacked by the last remaining part of the Locust and the Lambent, leading you into a boss fight with the Queen Mira, where you get to fight her big ass bug with a Hammer of Dawn, which makes for a kind of a fun mission overall. Her fight is all right. She kind of just flies around and just keeps spawning swarms, and you just keep hitting her with a hammer until she dies, so it's okay. It's kind of weird they introduced like ammo to the Hammer of Dawn, which is kind of bizarre, but I'm fine with that as well. But as you fight through and actually defeat her, she ends up going for like a last remaining attack on the thing, but fails at it, and her bug ends up dying, and then the machine finally kicks in and works. And this kills all of the emulsion and Lambent, like all of it just gets completely annihilated immediately. Same with the Locust, which looks awesome in this cutscene. But sadly, you also learn at this point that your father, the reason why he knew that this would work is because he tested it on himself. So he sadly passes at this part, and this is how it ends right there. The one other thing that happens here is Queen Mira's stupid ass gets out of the bug somehow. I don't know how she didn't die from the Hammer of Dawn. Comes over and starts talking her shit, and you stab her with Dom's knife, which is kind of like a satisfying conclusion to this game. Overall, I do find this game really entertaining, and I do think this game has a really special place in my heart. I think I would have enjoyed the campaign a lot more if I didn't push through 3 games all at once to try to get this done. So it probably would have felt a lot better if it wasn't kind of like a rush thing, and like wasn't all like in just one like set like time frame. I played like 20 hours worth of Gears of War all in a row, so it kind of was just like a little too much for me, but it is still really fun. The environments are beautiful, the gameplay is amazing, and everything about this game just feels great overall. And now this gets me really excited for E-Day, because there's a lot of interesting things I wish they would have went over in this game that can kind of go over in the new one. And one thing I do want to say, this is just like some things I want to have in the new game, is with this Emergence one, I kind of want to see more from the Locust side. I know the Rise of Ram DLC that they had in this game goes a little bit over that. Sadly, I don't have that DLC, so I didn't really get to go over it in this video. But it is interesting to have like the Locust side, and I hope that's how the first game, like for the E-Day, starts with it, like giving you kind of like a perspective of like why the Locust ended up coming above ground, and giving that as the first mission, being able to play as like some grubs and finding out how they like came to this conclusion, which would be kind of interesting. But like I said, I think this game was overall really fun for the campaign, and the multiplayer is absolutely great. I personally would recommend checking that out as well, mostly if you are not as good as people that play Reloaded. The people that play this are a lot more casual, so I highly recommend it for that. But the only other thing that they added that made this one interesting is Beast Mode. Horde has been upgraded a lot more, so now there's like money that you can get and like defenses that you can buy and stuff. But Beast Mode is what makes this one so special. Now, instead of like being like defensive, you can be offensive by playing as a Locust, where you get like a mass variety of different types of Locust enemies to be able to play, like the Cantus, the Berserker, the Maulers and stuff like that, making for like a very interesting gameplay, which I like overall. I think it's really cool being able to play as the enemy, and I'm always a huge fan of being able to do this in games, but a lot of games don't give you the chance, so it kind of sucks in that way. So at least in this one, they actually built on that and gave us that. I heard in the later date games, they kind of removed this, so I'll have to see that when I go through those, or I'm not sure if I'm going to make videos on those yet. But I want to see if they do have this stuff in the next one, but we'll see when I actually get to them. But yeah, overall, I think all 3 games are almost perfect. The first one is probably my least favorite, but it just got better over and over. Like Gears of War 1 was pretty good, Gears of War 2 was great, and Gears of War 3 was great as well. Don't get me wrong, the first one's not a bad game, but when you compare to the other 2 games, it's hard to like have a good comparison, because they are just so much better, but it's just because they had building blocks from the first game to build on. It's not like it was like a completely new game for them. Like they had something already set there in place, which makes sense. But yeah, they're just great. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you leave a like and a sub. And if you have suggestions for anything else to check out, make sure you leave them down in the comments down below. But I'll see y'all next time. See ya.